This show is brought to you by Safety FM.
We learn that people slip, it's only human. Errors show the path to grow and we're improving. Context shakes the way we do our best work. Focus on the system, no blame can hold us back. 5 hot principles lifting us higher. Learning without blame, fueling our fire. Together we grow, together we thrive. Keeping operational excellence alive.
Hello and welcome back to Hop Into Action. I'm Brent Sutton. Today, I want to take you on a journey back to the origins of learning from work, the value it holds for us today, and the role leadership plays in creating the conditions for learning. And along the way, I'll offer a word of caution about something that has caught out many organizations, the risk of normalising work. This isn't theory, this is real, and it matters. During 2024, I was interviewing people who had been there during the formative years of human performance, what later evolved into human and organisational performance, or HOP. One document kept coming up, Excellence in Human Performance. It came out of the nuclear industry in the early 1990s. This was a time when the industry was still living with the scars of 3 Mile Island and Chernobyl. The stakes could not have been higher. They formed a special review committee on human performance. It brought together utility operators, engineers, senior leaders, and experts. And their conclusion was powerful. They said, most causes of human performance problems exist in the work environment, indicating weaknesses in organisation and management. That was radical for the time. Until then, the focus had been squarely on workers, errors, compliance, behaviour. But this committee was saying, hang on, we can't fix this by blaming individuals. We need to look at the system. And in doing so, they gave us the DNA of what we now call HOP, from the work of Todd Conklin. They laid out 3 things that had to come together. 1, workers creating shared understanding. 2, leaders promote teamwork and systems to support good outcomes. 3, organisations fostering a culture of learning and continuous improvement. Even 30 years ago, they weren't just focused on zero harm or ticking compliance boxes. They were already talking about doing safety with people, not 2 people or 4 people. And that's where learning from work truly began. Now let's bring this forward into our everyday world. Every day, people come to work wanting to do a good job. Nobody wakes up in the morning thinking, I'd like to make a mistake today. And most of the time, work goes well. The shift finishes, the task is completed, and nothing goes wrong. But beneath the surface, there are always adaptations happening. Quiet, almost invisible adjustments. A worker bypasses a step in the procedure, not recklessly, but because the step doesn't make sense in the context. A team pauses the job because something feels off, even though nothing obvious is wrong. Someone double checks a gauge because they've learned not to trust it. These are the stories of workers done. They are not signs of failure. They are signs of intelligence, yet most of the time they pass unnoticed. No one stops to ask, what did we learn from that? The cost of not learning is subtle. It doesn't announce itself. It builds quietly over time. Workarounds become the norm. Weak signals get ignored. Questions go unasked. And then one day, when something does go wrong, we look back and say, we should have seen it coming. But the signs were always there. That's why learning matters. It makes the invisible visible. It turns tacit knowledge into shared understanding. It gives organisations the ability to adapt before failure, not just after. As I've often said, The real work of improvement starts with understanding, not fixing.
We are taking a break from the podcast for this message. Ever wondered how to move beyond blame and start truly learning from work? The Hop Beginner's Guide series is your step-by-step companion to doing safety differently. Written by Brent Sutton with insights and contributions from Todd Conklin, Jeffrey Lith, Brent Robinson, and others, these guides bring real stories, practical tools, and clear explanations of the 5 HOP principles. Whether you're a leader, safety practitioner, or supporting frontline workers, you'll discover how error is normal, context drives behavior, and learning is vital. Start building capability, capacity, and resilience today. Search HOP Beginners Guide on Amazon, because better work begins with better learning. And now, back to the podcast.
When we talk about learning from work, we have to talk about storytelling. Procedures tell us how work should happen, but stories show us how work does happen. Stories are sticky. People remember them. They don't just explain what happened, but why it happened. They carry emotion, and that's what makes the lesson stay with us. Think about how humans have always learned. Long before risk matrices and dashboards, our ancestors sat around fires telling stories. Stories about the hunt, stories about the storm, stories about what worked and what didn't. Those stories carried warnings, opportunities, and wisdom. They helped the next generation adapt and survive. And it's no different today. The experienced worker who says to the new apprentice, "Watch out for that valve. It always sticks when it rains." That's a story. That's tacit knowledge being shared. Without those stories, organizations lose more than memory. They lose resilience. HOP tools like learning teams and the 4Ds, the practice many of you are familiar with, are really just a modern way of creating space for storytelling. A way for people to come together and say, here's what really happens. And when we listen, we find the weak signals. We find the adaptations. We find the seeds of improvement. Now let's turn to leadership. Leadership is often framed as action, making decisions, driving results, setting direction, but it's also about attention. Where leaders look and how they listen sets the tone for the whole organization. And here's the thing, leaders are under enormous pressure to appear certain, to have the answers, to project confidence, but learning demands something different. It demands humility. It demands curiosity. It asks leaders to step into the world of everyday work and say, show me what it's like for you. That's not easy. It can feel uncomfortable, but when leaders do it, something shifts. Workers see that their experience matters. Their tacit knowledge becomes part of the system, not something left in the shadows. And here's the payoff. When leaders engage in learning, they make better decisions. Not because they're guessing less, but because they're grounded in reality. They stop managing by metrics alone and start managing by meaning. And that's what creates trust. But now, let me share a caution. Too often, we talk about normal work. But when you're working with high energy hazards, the stuff that kills you, the stickies, there is nothing normal about it. The more often things go right, the more we believe they can't go wrong. That's the normalisation of risk. Alongside it is risk homeostasis. That's when people unconsciously balance their behaviour back to a comfort zone. It's like driving a car. If the road feels safer, you speed up without thinking. These forces are subtle, but they are dangerous. Think of the watermelon analogy. On the outside, the dashboard looks green, everything's fine, but inside it's red. Seeds of weak signals are scattered everywhere. And if we don't cut the watermelon open, we never see them. Todd Conklin has a line I often repeat, Death hides in regular work. And he's right. The biggest risks often live inside the everyday tasks, the ones that feel routine. That's why I prefer the term everyday work, because everyday work is dynamic. It ebbs and flows like a river. It's never the same twice. Inside everyday work, weak signals are always present. They don't go away. Most of the time, they lead to successful adaptation, but every so often, they line up, and that's when we get an event. So leaders, don't normalise, be curious. Look for the red inside the green. So where does this leave us? The origins of HOP remind us that human performance is not just about workers. It's about workers, leaders, and organisations aligned together. The value of learning from work is that it surfaces the hidden, the tacit knowledge, the weak signals, the adaptations that keep systems going. The role of leadership is to create the conditions where learning can happen. That means humility, curiosity, and presence. And the risk we face if we fail to do this is normalisation. Believing that because things look fine, they are fine. But we know better. Work is messy, risk is dynamic, and learning is what keeps us resilient. So as you go about your week, I encourage you to slow down and notice. Listen to the quiet adjustments people make. Pay attention to the weak signals. Ask a worker what helps them and what hinders them. Don't dismiss these stories. They are not noise. They are the seeds of learning. And remember, learning matters because people matter. I'm Brent Sutton, and this has been Hop Into Action. Thanks for listening. Stay curious, stay humble, and keep learning from work. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey with Hop Into Action. I've loved sharing stories, ideas, and practical ways to do safety differently with you. Your support and curiosity are what make this community so strong, and I want to thank you for being part of it. If you're ready to keep building capability, capacity, and resilience, I'd encourage you to check out the HOP Beginner's Guide series on Amazon. Each volume is short, practical, and packed with insights, and the book series is designed for busy people who want real impact, not theory. This isn't the end of the conversation, just the next step in your journey. So thank you again for listening, for learning, for supporting BetterWork. Until next time, remember, small changes, shared stories, and thoughtful practice lead to big results with HOP, learning teams, and the 4Ds.
We learn that people slip, it's only human. Errors show the path to grow and we're improving. Context shakes away, we do our best work. Focus on the system, no blame can hold us back. 5 HOP principles lifting us higher. Learning without blame, fueling our fire. Together we grow, together we thrive. Keeping operational excellence alive.